Doc, look, you gotta help me. Let's forget about the liver. You can ground me if I'm crazy, right?
Oh, sure, I have to. I have to ground anyone who's crazy.
Then ground me, I'm crazy.
You're not crazy.
But I am. Ask anyone, they'll tell you how crazy I am.
Yeah, but they're crazy.
Then why don't you ground them?
Why don't they ask me to ground them?
Because they're crazy, that's
why. Of course
why.
they're crazy. I just told you they're crazy, didn't I? And you can't have crazy people decide whether you're crazy or not.
Is Orr crazy?
Oh, he sure is.
Can you ground him?
I sure can, but first he has to ask me to.
Then why doesn't he ask you?
Because he's crazy. He'd have to be crazy to want to keep flying combat missions. Sure, I can ground Orr, but first he has to ask me to.
And that's all he has to do to be grounded?
That's it, just let him ask.
And then you can ground him?
No, then I can't ground him.
Why not?
Catch-22. Anyone who wants to get out of combat duty isn't really crazy. Catch-22 specifies that a concern for one's own safety in the face of danger, real and immediate, is the process of a rational mind.
What?
Bringing this to life in a 2019 environment, what were some things that you guys worked on to make it kind of land with a bit more strength for these times?
What appears to be a war movie is actually something that deals with power and people who are in power and the administration of power and the abuse of power. And so one thing that we wanted to bring out was the insanity and the absurdity of what happens with people who are in power and what they do when they abuse that power.
Do you feel that when people watch this series on Hulu, they're going to get a sense and it will reveal something new to them of a time they thought they understood?
Yeah, I do. You know, when we came aboard this, when George and I came aboard this, we sort of talked about the idea that there's never really a bad time to talk about the absurdity of war. Mm-hmm. And Ellen just touched on this, the idea that, you know, even what's happening today, the idea that there are some absurd things that are happening as we sit here literally at this very moment.
We live in an America that's fighting at least 2 wars right now as it is. Did you feel a sense to touch on that as you wanted to tell this story for a 2019 audience? Or did you pretty much feel you wanted to stay pretty close to the canon?
This began with Luke and I talking about books that perhaps would be challenging to do as movies, but would lend themselves to limited series format. And Luke pointed out that Catch-22 is, of course, about war, but it's also about the absurdity of bureaucracy, the absurdity of power, and in some ways it's a kind of, you know, origin story of the current geopolitical state of things. And so we made an agreement with Paramount to do it, and Luke disappeared for a few months and came back with these fantastic scripts.
Luke, in adaptation is always a process, clearly. How did you decide how to take the essence of the book, what appealed to you from the book, and bring it to the screen? And what were some of the decisions you had to make about stuff to leave out?
The mission statement for me was to retain the chaotic energy of the novel, but to make a more coherent canvas on which the characters could actually have actual emotional journeys through 6 episodes. And the central journey is Yossarian's journey, played by Chris Abbott, a journey of loss and bewilderment, really. It was hard. There are about 40 characters in the novel. I whittled it down to around 15 for this, approximately, and sometimes took 2 characters and blended them into one, because as a single character they didn't do enough, but making them into 2 characters would help give them substance over 6 episodes. It was really hard making decisions about what to leave out of the novel. It's a glorious novel.
If you reread the novel, and it's a beautiful, beautiful mess. This novel, and the fact.
And you mean that in the best.
In the best sense. I grew up. This is, you know, this to me, this is the Bible growing up, and so what he did with this novel in a way that he was to find the through story, you know, Yossarian's arc through this whole thing, and to really sort of. I mean, there were so many great characters that he had to get rid of, that he had to throw away. So it's a real testament to
Christopher, for you, you know, taking on such an iconic literary character, how did you prepare yourself for the role?
I think it's a little bit of a trap to get caught up in the idea, the worry of playing a famous literary character. I mean, there was fear in that, like there is anything, you know, that there's going to be kind of, you know, of course, in the beginning I worried about, like, are all, like, you know, the Catch-22 nerds gonna hate me for, you know what I mean? But I need to kind of get over that and just do the job. So it became less for me. I've read the book a few times before doing this, and then I kind of forgot it, and then just did the scripts as is. Trusted that I knew the story, and then just did these scripts as they were. So yeah, I mean, it's very challenging, but I think the trick to it was just playing each moment truthful. So whether it was a very funny slash satirical scene, which then led right into something kind of harrowing and dramatic, I think the trick is just to be honest about it in both. And when it's funny, don't try to be funny. Just play it seriously and kind of commit to it.
For you as an actor, how was that relationship, and how important was it for you working with George in terms of finding your character and finding how that character worked within the greater whole?
George, obviously being who he is, I think inherently can make a lot of actors nervous, and especially all the young guys in this show. And he kind of has a great way of kind of downplaying that and keeping it even, and he's aware of it. So it's strategical, but it's also very sincere and smart. I think on his behalf, all of his concerns were mine as well, and he was considerate in that way. And he knows about actor energy and kind of maintaining that and keeping it fresh.